Now with us is New York Republican Congressman Donovan, who was a no on health care. Does he see a way forward from here? Congressman, do you agree with what your counterpart said, Mark Meadows, that all of a sudden now it's not so crucial that these tax cuts be revenue neutral?
Well, I think, Neil, first of all, what happened with the health care bill, I don't think the President and Speaker Ryan and Vice President Pence got enough credit. The Affordable Care Act was going to fall upon itself. It was going to collapse. There wasn't enough money to pay for all the things that are in there. And the President, the Vice President, Speaker Ryan gave me, someone who's been in Congress 22 months, a voice the same as if I was in Congress with my colleagues who have been here for 30 years. So they tried to do something, and I don't think enough people are talking about that. I think with the tax reform, we need tax reform. We have to stimulate the economy. We have to make this simpler and easier for people. We have to make it fairer for working families and fairer for the corporations that are based here in the United States so they can compete worldwide. So I don't think so much that the health care bill was such a failure on the administration or on the leadership of Paul Ryan. I think it was more like these entities tried to do something for the American people rather than sit back and just point fingers at the prior administration.
All right, well, be that as it may, now the pressure is on to do something then, regardless of differences among different groups on tax cuts. And I'm getting different vibes, sir, on what you would, not you particularly, but Republicans in general, would support. For example, one of the things that has been discussed in getting big tax cuts, particularly for the wealthy, is to offset that by limiting, state local taxes and the deductions for them. Now, you come from a very high tax state, New York. How would you feel about that?
Well, we have a difficulty with that. I mean, the people I represent get to deduct their state and local taxes. I know that not-for-profits are concerned that if you can't deduct what your donations are to not-for-profits, that's going to hurt their revenue base because people will be less likely to donate. So I think we have to examine what the proposals are. And, just like with health care, the President and the Speaker and the Vice President look through this through different lenses. They have to look at what's good for 330 million people. All of us in the House of Representatives have to look through this through the lens of what's good for the 740,000 people that we represent. And what's good for the people in Ames, Iowa might necessarily be good for the people in Brooklyn and Staten Island that I represent.
Do you think they're over-obsessing then about paying for these tax cuts? There's some in your party service say, tax cuts, if you use dynamic accounting, the drill, will create revenues themselves. You might have short-term deficits, but the revenue does come in. Are you in that camp, and do you think ultimately Republicans will be in that camp, so you don't even get into this issue of how you pay for them because you don't treat them like spending?
Well, I think, what we're going to have to do is examine every single proposal and see what that is. I think one of the problems with the health care bill was we had to vote yes or no on the entire package. Yet Wednesday we voted on something I thought was very good, allowing small businesses to join insurance pools so that makes their insurance purchases cheaper and gives better care for their workers. We voted that as a standalone bill. Some of these tax reform proposals we should look at individually, because when you have to vote on an entire package, it's either an up or down. There may be some good things in the reform package that you want to vote for, but there are some harmful things that hurt the people that you represent. And therefore you end up being a no vote, even though there's some good things in there for the people that you were sent to Congress to represent.
I got a sense, sir, you touched on it, that Republicans weren't communicating enough with each other, let alone outside groups, on that could explain what happened, because when people got a gander at what they were looking at, they didn't like it. Some are blaming the president, and you're not among those, and some are blaming Speaker Ryan, some are blaming the leadership, others are blaming the conservatives for torpedoing it. But what's been revealed quite clearly is that Republicans are sharply divided on these issues. Do you think it torpedoes progress on tax cuts?
No, I don't. I don't think it torpedoes that. I don't think it torpedoes immigration reform, infrastructure. I think this is an example. Those who said that the White House didn't communicate with them or the Speaker's office didn't communicate with them, we were all invited to the White House. I went last Tuesday and spoke to the President directly. The Vice President called me up on the phone to ask me what my concerns were. Certainly the leadership in the House, under Paul Ryan's leadership, again, Neil, I've only been here 22 months. I don't know what it was like before I got here, but under Paul Ryan's leadership, it has been open door. Everyone has an equal voice. They have held listening sessions before the bill was proposed, and even during the negotiations, as you saw last week, they were calling individual members up and saying, what can we do? What do you need? What what helps the people you represent that could get you to a yes vote. So I don't believe that there was a lack of communication here. I think it was an incredible effort by all those who were involved.
Regrets that it was the health care thing first and not tax cuts?
Yeah, and there might have been some easier things to do, Neil. You're absolutely right. There might have been some things that the administration could have gotten some victories with before they tackled something as complicated, and the president recognized how complicated health care is. So it would have been maybe but his challenge was that he said he was going to do this first day, and this was a priority of his. So tackling that issue is not a failure in my eyes.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you, Neil.